Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world in connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.
Good day and welcome back to Around the Bead. I am Joe Pahanik and I'm joined with my co-host John Holsey. We've got our November 2025 news episode and we're going to get right to it. John, you ready to kick the tires?
Let's get to kicking.
Okay, so HR House of Representatives 3401. Yes or no, true or false, did you know about this 48 hours ago?
I did not know about it, but I've done a little bit of research since then and it's you're laughing is probably the right reaction.
So retreading is a topic that nobody wants to talk about, but is a factor in our industry. And there is a bill that is being pushed through the House of Representatives to provide a $30 tax credit or up to 30% of the price of the retread to a fleet.
For a 3-year span.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And nobody in the industry is talking about it.
Probably nobody knows about it. I certainly didn't, and I try to stay up on things. If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known 48 hours ago.
Well, it's not the fleets pushing it, right? Because
No.
we all deal with fleets, right? It's not big fleets, it's not small fleets. There's nobody out there saying, "Yeah, let's go get some retread money from the government." It's not from tire dealers.
You know, it's funny. You know, it's the thing that stuck out most to me was we're doing this to save jobs. We're doing this to keep the retread shops employed. And my first thought was, that's BS. That's bullshit. The reality is every retreader is probably looking at fully automated shops in the future, which is going to eliminate probably half of the employee base out there. The reality is they should just call it what it is. We need to be more profitable.
Yeah. The retread is dropping at 3 to 4% annually with no end in sight.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, and that's probably for another pod. But you're exactly right. Is the goals within the industry is to reduce headcount at a plant by 30 to 40% initially, with 50% being the long-term goal. It's hard to imagine this bill getting passed with literally no support from any of the industry's infrastructure, but you never know. I mean, politics has a funny way.
Yes, it does. I tend to think it will get passed because politics has a funny way.
Yeah.
You know, I look at it and I go, who's really driving this bill? It's is it the retreaders ourselves? Is it the major manufacturers? Is it Bridgestone, Goodyear, Continental, Michelin? Who's really driving it, and what's the true reason behind it?
Well, a majority of the industry is not driving it. It's not fleet driven. If the bill passes, retread pricing is going to go up $30 or 30%.
Absolutely. That's my first thought is, for years we've talked about retreaders struggling to make money. In fact, if there wasn't, subsidies from manufacturers or backside money or discounts behind the scenes, they'd probably all lose money. Is this the first step of reducing some of that to pass some price increases on not only to the retreader but to the fleets to compensate for the $30? At the end of the day, I don't believe there's going to be any fleet saving money in the long run.
Not a fleet or a retreader.
Yeah.
It's going to be rubber manufacturer where the big gain is.
Yeah.
Everybody else will be in the same boat.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on from that. I got some headlines that do kind of tailor to this, coming from some of the trade magazines out there. Goodyear financial woes continue. Michelin blames North American sales for earnings drop. That coupled with I follow Freight Waves. You follow Freight Waves?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I like Freight Waves and Freight Caviar.
Yeah.
Freight Caviar is the brokers.
Yeah.
It cracks me up. They're talking about double brokering and dealing with trucking companies, and they have a pretty humorous viewpoint on it.
Oh yeah.
But freight waves, it shows when I look at it on a day-to-day basis, it shows basically winners and losers, and there are a lot of losers in freight and transport right now. The market sucks.
It's tough.
It's brutal. There are some winners out there, like JB Hunt is out there beating their earnings expectation. But undoubtedly, I guess my question is, when it comes to freight and you hear that those trade magazine publications about Goodyear's performance, Michelin's performance, major manufacturer tire performance, is there a tire industry issue? Or is this solely based off of the current economic state of freight?
You know, I don't know. I go back and forth on it. I think it's, we all know that OE demand over the next couple of years is going to be really tight and probably declining, which should hopefully be good for replacement. But we also know that the trucking industry, especially in freight, is struggling, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, the guys who provide the best service, in my opinion, are the guys who are really suffering. We deal with freight ourselves. We ship out, and JB Hunt's a perfect example. They generally come in at a price point that looks really good, except for you don't know when your freight's going to get there. And and that has always been a reason we've stayed away from them in some cases. But as the economy goes through struggles, people start looking at price more. And is that driving their growth versus someone like a CRST who is probably struggling a little bit this year?
I don't know enough about freight to say on that end from a performance and economics, but it certainly seems like it's a good time to be big, right? The bigger you are, you're seeing some economies of scale there, and every 0.1% matters.
Are we looking at a near future where one of the other big boys go out unannounced?
From a tire manufacturer?
No, from a freight.
Freight. Yeah, potentially, or absorbed. I mean, Yellow was last year.
I think it was the year before, which was a big surprise. I mean, to a lot of people. I mean, it was certainly to me. But are we looking at that possibly happening again?
The more I look at it, and a lot of this comes from Freight Waves and different news magazines as it relates to transport, is there's more challenges there than meet the initial eye, right? Not just supply and demand. Take these huge lawsuits. And I bring this up with retreading. That's a little sidebar, is the liability of retreading when it comes to a transport fleet.
Yeah.
But whether it's union driven, personnel driven, liability on the side of the road, fleets are incurring huge damages due to regulation, due to the liabilities of running a fleet, and that's cutting right out of their bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, us being in California, we've probably been at the forefront of that with emissions. I mean, it's chased a considerable amount of freight carriers and other trucking companies out of California, and the ones that have maintained aren't as profitable as they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And the foreseeable future is that's only going to get worse. And I think being in California, we're pretty familiar with the word liability, lawsuits, stuff like that. And I think maybe the rest of the country is starting to catch up and taking some of that them blows.
It certainly is. And these big transport companies, or just transport in general, where it's high revenue, become targets. Right? They maybe have a very tight bottom line, but their revenue is huge, and they become targets for people who are looking to take some of that. I'm wondering if right now we're seeing a shift, and I'd love to get some transport guys on the show, if we're seeing a shift in the way that transportation is being handled in the United States. And what I mean by that is we'd look at less than truckload, full truckload. Those are kind of the basic numbers, last mile delivery. But are we seeing really structural infrastructure changes in how a product is delivered to an end user, because of Amazon, not because of Amazon, warehousing, direct-to-consumer business, are we seeing a dramatic shift where some are winning and some are losing because of it? Or is this just a point in time where people are buying less and they're not moving as much freight?
I think it's a combination. I mean, I want to, I see more and more, I call it, I was telling my wife, because she has a tendency to have an Amazon package or two delivered daily. So, so as I'm roughing her up on that, I notice more and more personal vehicles delivering Amazon packages. Are we going to transition to either a lot of the vans, as we've seen, the Sprinter vans and so forth, doing a lot of this, smaller package, medium-sized packages, and maybe even an Uber-type delivery system?
I think there already is a B2B Uber-type agreements set up out there. Where if they can find somebody to do it cheaper than doing it themselves, they'll head that route. And I don't know if that's temporary or if that's a long-term play. I think it depends on the amount of people that are willing to drive and deliver packages for $4 a package or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm with you. I think it's a little bit of both going to where the tire industry is. I think there are some inherent challenges with what the value of a tire or value of a service is to fleets out there. But I also think a lot of the financial challenges for the big majors, dealers, retreaders is freight driven.
Yeah, I think, Joe, and you and I have certainly had multiple conversations on it.
Just about every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
There's there's a big disconnect between the tire dealer, commercial tire dealer, and the fleets, and I think that needs to be bridged. I don't think a lot of freight companies really understand what the cost is by not running the proper tire, and having a program.
Right.
And I think that's affecting their bottom line more than they're aware of it. And I think the people who could solve that are going to be ahead of the game.
Well, that's really the whole point of this podcast, is for us to get closer to fleets.
Yeah.
It is a fleet-driven podcast. I'll give you a quote, and hopefully he's listening, but I was looking at getting a CEO or somebody from his team on the show, and he's listening, and he's basically giving me feedback that it feels too technical to a fleet. And that resonated with me, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we have to put this in terms and value that is absorbable for a fleet. But this is a guy who runs a big business, and somewhere down the line, there's a P&L with probably a big number for tires. And his quote was, we're not going to buy the cheap Chinese, but we're not going to buy a Michelin either.
Yeah.
Right? Anywhere in between is good. It says a lot of where we need to go.
It absolutely does. And I think we hit on that 3 or 4 podcasts ago, where we're, what's the future of the tier 2, tier 3 tires?
Mm-hmm.
Is the tier 2 the next tier 1?
Yeah.
I mean, is that going to be the focus point for most fleets to get the, best bang for their buck?
Until value is proven otherwise, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't talk about freight being down and not talk about aggregates and mining being good. Some Q3 woes, I think, from tariffs, which we'll talk about tariffs. But still, your big players out there, your Vulcans, your Martin Mariettas, your big international miners, posting still really nice earnings per share.
Yeah. I was having a conversation yesterday with a gentleman, and we were talking about mining, and it was funny. He made an interesting comment where he said, people in the world don't understand the world cannot operate without mining operations and aggregate. It drives everything, whether it's electricity, fuel, precious metals, batteries for our Teslas, and everything else. I mean, everything we do has some type of mining operation attached to it.
Yeah, I don't think it really popped into my head until I heard it from Aaron Witt and the Build Witt team, and those guys talking about just how crucial it is to the global economy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We want to get into industry stuff?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. ATD, I should say, one of the trade mags published that ATD has signed CMA, which is double coin for the most part, product line, GT Radial, and Nexen.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So while you're thinking about it, for the viewers out there, ATD is the largest wholesale distributor of tires on the planet. They just went through their third bankruptcy. They've got new leadership. Most of the assets have been bought back from their previous owners or major financial lenders, and they've been canceled by a lot of major tire brands for credit reasons and because those brands have built their own distribution over the last 10 years. So now they seemingly don't need it to compete. But these are three, I would say, interesting brands of choice to jump on board.
Yeah, and maybe more so than brand, maybe it's an interesting concept. Are they moving away from tier 1 product and looking at a replacement market that is focused on tier 2, tier 3? And that's what they figure is going to drive their profitability, because I think everyone agrees if they can't figure out a way, to become profitable, they're going to be in their fourth before long. So is this a shift on their business model to say, hey, we need to bring in more tier 2, tier 3 products and focus on that?
I think it absolutely is. Whether they have a choice or not is a different story. Yeah. But I like the play by ATD, and I like the play by a lot of those brands. Double Coin was a huge brand in the basically late 2000s. Yeah. This gives them a ton of distribution. GT Radial was a top 10 manufacturer globally in the late 90s to basically 2010. They got hit with a tariff, one of the first rounds of tariffs, and basically never recovered. Yeah, never came back. Yeah. Now they have U.S. production, right? So two factories coming online that I think are interesting is Hankook has a PLT and a truck factory, and I believe that's the same thing with GT Radials. They've got domestic truck, but most certainly domestic passenger light truck.
Yeah, in fact, I think GT announced a U.S. manufacturing plant probably 10 years ago and just never. I mean, they've been looking at this for a long time.
But yeah, a long time.
Yeah, it's nice to see it happen. I mean, I've always I was selling GT 25 years ago when we didn't use the abbreviation on GT and we called it by what the real name was, which I can never pronounce properly.
Can you try for our viewers? Because I don't remember what it is.
I'm gonna really gut it, but it was. Guta Tunga, I think, something like that. I'm going to get a lot of comments on
editors. Sure. If you could clip that part right there. Thank you.
You set me up completely there, Joe.
Yeah, no, this is being recorded.
Yep.
So I mean, GT Radial's a monster. They could really take a lot of market share, and then you have Nexen coming on board, which Nexen has really had poor distribution in North America. They've got a new CEO, if I recall. It's Paolo, formerly from Trelleborg. It's been a relatively niche winter tire on off-road and on-road.
Big following, kind of like Toyo in a lot of ways. I mean, I think Toyo's probably had a little bit better marketing and distribution, but Nexen is right there with them, I think.
It has some substantial brand loyalty. And so now it's kind of going big box, big leagues, which would be interesting.
It'll be real interesting. Yeah. It's exciting to see. I mean, the GT's always been a good performer for where it sits in the market. Mm-hmm. We'll see if they don't try to make a really solid jump to a true tier 2 to compete with people like Nexen, Hankook, Toyo. If they're going to try to make that move with the U.S. manufacturing.
Well, I think with all of it, we talk about tier 3, we talk about tier 2, we talk about tier 1. We more or less define those by market share, price, perceived value. Yeah. But going back to the fleets that may or may not be listening, is the industry is going to have to do better. We're going to have to do better at showing that value. Why should an Exxon be worth tier 2 pricing? Why should a Michelin be worth tier 1 pricing? Why should Double Coin be worth tier 3 pricing?
I'm good with the rest of the industry just sitting where they're at and let us do that job.
That's another quote. That's a bold statement right there.
Let me tell you, I'm okay with them not selling value.
Yeah.
Just keep selling price. We'll worry about the value proposition.
We do need to, and we talk about data a lot. We're going to talk about it. Let's just move right into the FS592.
Yeah.
So the FS591 was a really popular tire in certain markets in the United States,
especially in California.
It's a premium steer. California, Texas is a premium steer tire, selling between $300 and $400 for most of its time, and getting between 80 and 120,000 miles. You know,
all right. I think it's been really underpriced for the quality that it's put out over the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, I would like to stack that up so we can kind of talk about some of those. If you had a Michelin and a Goodyear that both could exceed 200,000, so they could get to 220, 230 if well maintained. But poorly maintained, you're seeing 160 to 180
at best.
At best, which is an interesting argument that I'm going to put this out here is a well maintained value price tire will outperform a poorly maintained premium tire
every day.
And that's something that the industry and fleets, that's going to be your best spend. That's going to be your best direction. Even consumers, whether you're a consumer, you run a 500 power unit fleet, is good maintenance, whether it's in-house or through a tire dealer, you're going to outperform whatever you bought as an asset, whether that was a Goodyear, whether that was a Firestone, whether it was a Michelin, whether it was a Double Coin. But let's look at those numbers. So let's say a Firestone FS591 was $400, getting 100,000 miles. Your Michelin at 200,000, we can call it 200 in there.
Yeah, call it 200. Yeah.
High six, close to 7.
Yeah.
It's close enough that maintenance is going to matter, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
Right? Theoretically, when you consider tire changes, a Firestone would be more expensive in the long run in that position than a Michelin. But that assumes great maintenance, right? And if you had poor maintenance and you were down to 150, 160 on the Michelin, all of a sudden it doesn't cost out.
Yeah, it doesn't cost out. And there's so many other little things that go along with that. Fuel economy. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it just a second ago, the cost of doing a tire change, service call, dismount, mount. That's another, if you do 2 steer tires, it's another $140, $150.
If you factor in alignments.
Most people are doing alignments at that same time.
Yep.
So, when you really factor all that in, the 2 tire changes to 1 tire change, the Michelin's really costing out. Right. You put a good maintenance program behind that and you increase their fuel economy, you save them money in other places. Now it's really costing out.
Yeah. What I think is very interesting about that premium steer segment is the spread of spend.
Yes.
So you could get as high as $700+ on a steer tire. You could be trying to play a tier 3 game, which I think they're going to break through the 100,000 mile barrier this year. I think that's a given, but
we have some running that are going to break it.
Yeah, we're going to bring data on the show to show them chasing that number. But you could get 80, 90, which is putting pressure on everybody to move up. But the spread of spend could be anything from $250 to $700 on a steer tire. It's a huge spread. So Firestone, one of their most popular tires, they move it to the FS592, similar to Michelin with the XDN2, now going to the X Line Grip D++ V coated directional.
Yes.
Little bit of joking there. I don't actually know the name.
You're close.
That's close. Thank you.
Yes.
Can you pronounce GT again for me?
No.
So it's a move that they have to do, right? Because if the tier 3 are chasing 100,000, okay, then what's the expectation? What from your chair, FS592, how many miles does it have to run to be successful?
I think it has to be pushing 150 to be a replacement. I think you know, and I think if it's under 150, then they replace the tire just to replace the tire because they felt it was time. The big question is, are they gonna value that tire at what it should be valued at? Are they gonna raise the price on it finally? And were the customers buying it not only because it had a name brand on it, it ran well, but also because of the price point? Would they have still bought the 591 if it was $100 more?
Yeah, and I don't know if I wouldn't say I even think that Firestone priced it incorrectly. I just think it was a tough value proposition for the dealer, and you saw dealers basically giving it away at cost, or close to cost, whether for back end incentives or didn't have another option. Either you're getting pressured from the top end, the guys that are running 200,000 miles. But you think about it, if you're getting 100,000 and you've got a tier 3 right below it that can easily get 80, and it's not $300-400, it's $200 to $300. Exactly. All of a sudden, that cost comparison is super, super tight. So I just think it was the performance, and the dealers need to move that tire. They
need to move it. Yeah, it's we talk about it. What is that commodity tire? And generally, for commercial tire dealers, it's been the tier 3 trailer tire. Low Pro 22.5 is the commodity tire. You sell it to get the position. You're not making a lot of money on it. And I think for Firestone, it was the FS591.
Yeah,
that was the commodity tire to get them units on vehicles.
Yeah. Well, it was incredibly popular. It had great reviews. People were happy with getting to that 100,000 mile mark. Pressure's on for FS592.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, Joe. We talk about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a possible shift from the tier 1 not also being because there's people not being able to prove value on it, or because the state of the transportation industry over the last couple of years and probably for the next couple of years, people are looking at their upfront cost versus their longevity and the long-term cost per mile versus acquisition costs?
Your ask is, are we seeing a temporary or a long-term shift in purchasing patterns?
Yeah. I mean, if a fleet, mid-sized fleet, 40 trucks, they're looking, hey, 2 steer tires, labor, alignment, I'm $2,000 out the door, right? For a tier 2 tire, solid tier 2 tire.
Yeah.
For a tier 1, you're $2,400. Are they looking at that now and going, hey, I could get a good quality tier 3 tire. I'm not going to get what I'm going to get out of a tier 1, but my price points now is $1,500 out the door. Do you see a shift because they're looking at upfront cost versus cost per mile long term?
Okay, so yes, I think it's anybody from somebody going to the store to buying milk to a transportation company saying, I'm going to need to make some initial cost decisions that may have negative long-term financial consequences. But yeah, I'm going to buy something cheaper right now, and I'll worry about the rest of it later because it's a war of attrition and freight.
Survival.
It is 100%. You mentioned JB Hunt, having lower rates out there. I don't know that, but they can do that for as long as they can in order to weed everybody else out, and then demand goes back up, spot market goes back up, and they crush it. Yeah. So, I think fleets are making those decisions, and they should. They have to.
They have to.
Because them winning and losing may be 1 quarter's worth of expenses.
Yeah.
At this point, right? It's how many drivers can you keep in those seats profitably, and if it has a X effect, Y effect on fuel or casings or what have you, someone needs to quantify it, right? And that's where on the dealer side it really needs to come in, which more or less we talk about again every single day. But I think there's a shift short term, and I also think there's a long term shift. I think that concept of I'm not going to buy the cheapest thing, but I'm also not going to buy the ultra premium. Ultra premium has to prove why it needs to go on, and everything in between is fighting for a majority of the market share.
I agree.
Yeah,
which puts more emphasis on why ATD is going the route they're going.
Yeah, they got. You think from a business standpoint, they got burned pretty. I want to say it was a long-term burn, but their other people built distribution around them, and then didn't feel like they had to rely on them. ATT is still very interesting to me because it was more or less the first major wholesale distributor that had zero investment from manufacturers. And they'll adjust based off of buying patterns for sure. And if buying patterns are hitting tier 2, tier 3, that's probably where they're headed, because there's not any need for more major manufacturer distribution. If you want a Goodyear or Michelin, you can get it on any corner, any street, practically globally. Okay, we talked about the Retread bill, FS591, distribution, plants.
Let's talk about Michelin's financials and outlook.
Well, what do you want to talk about?
I think you look at all four of the majors, which I would consider Michelin, Bridgestone, Goodyear, Continental, not necessarily in that order, but they all seem to be suffering. And I think Michelin has probably made the most dramatic changes internally, at least from my perspective, over the last few years, reducing staff, changing the way they go to market. And they have some of the most dramatic drops also in their financials and on their outlook. I wonder if that doesn't have a little bit to do with it.
So I would say to that it's all relative. The major manufacturers, with the exception of Goodyear, outperform every other element, every other supply chain in the industry, including the customer base. So your big three out there are pulling down net profits of 10+% on anywhere between $15 and $30+ billion. The wholesalers are pulling down less than 2, dealers less than 2. We already mentioned distributors, and fleets incredibly tight. So there certainly are some woes there, but I'm not raising the red flag that hey, there's going to be a big shift and it's going to jump down to 0.
I don't see that happening.
But it's certainly been impactful. They're not, as of right now, not enjoying the healthy net profits. I don't know if field support will ever return. We can get into AI here for a little bit, but everybody's trying to cut down on customer service.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just question whether they're a little bit too soon to that ball game yet. Mm-hmm. Are they, especially in the fleet, the commercial side of it, where in a lot of ways relationship still matters. When I'm talking to big fleets, medium fleets, construction companies that used to have representation from the major manufacturers, and now they don't even know who their rep is, or their rep is 2,000 miles away. I don't see anybody who's happy about that, who is saying, hey, I'm enjoying the level of customer service I received today. What I'm hearing is, hey, my price is going up and my customer service is going down, and I'm pissed off.
I don't disagree with that. Relationships are why pretty much we do everything. I would still like to get help at Costco and Safeway when I go.
Shop there, right?
And I don't always get it, but I still got to go to the grocery store. I just be a little bit more bitter, a little bit more older, cranky man about it. But I move on, right?
I got called out for being an old grumpy guy the other day because I still refuse to go to self checkout. Mm-hmm. And my wife's like, just get your shit together. And I'm like, I'm not doing it.
My issue with self checkout is that when you do self checkout and then it doesn't work,
and you still need help,
I am hot. I am hot. I've got to wave somebody down, and the lowest totem pole in the grocery store is the self-checkout help person.
Yes.
Right. So they are so angry to see me, and I'm like trying to run something through, and I can't get the barcode to work. And,
I'm with you, man. I hate it.
I feel like I'm doing
line.
them a favor. Can you please come over and help me with this machine?
They're not paying me.
It's
writing
not
me a
my
check.
fault.
I'm with you, man. They're not paying me to bag my own groceries, right?
No.
My cost of food didn't go down.
So my point is on the grocery store thing is there was once upon a time, I'm young, but I can still remember this, where you basically could find help in every aisle. Yep. You could flag somebody down and be like, where are the olives? Oh, let me walk you to there, sir. They're on aisle F18. And grocery stores had to pivot because they, for whatever reason, competitive reasons, couldn't afford. Now I'll play a little devil's advocate so we can critique, hey, there's not enough support in the field from major manufacturers. Okay, well, you've got $100 million, $200 million, $500 million imports manufacturers running with 5 people in the United States, 10 people in the United States. So they have a lot less infrastructure cost. Now they're running on lower margins, right? We'd have to make sure the maths right there. But my point is that they can do that very, very efficiently. And if you're on the other side of the coin and you've got 1,000 reps in the field, you got to start thinking about that.
No, but we also talk about value. And I think the imports, the tier 3, tier 4, they're not worried about value at this point. They're worried about, I need to be cheap. I need to get into the fleets. A majority of them. And I think there are a group of them now that are recognizing we need to up our game and we need to move into that upper tier, 3 or mid tier 3. The manufacturers aren't selling on price in most cases.
So, okay, a lot of things to unpack there. I heard this from a industry association that was given a pitch on the retread bill, and they were like, the cheap Chinese don't retread. And that's not true at all.
That's not true at all.
So
no.
Some of them have the best retread warranties out there. They do perform. 2, everything is imported pretty much. I mean, there is some domestic supply, but so much is imported. And you make a great point, which is if you are the flagship, let's call it the Whole Foods of Safeway or Whole Foods of grocery, you do have to have premium customer service, right? If you're not, completely different ballgame. So I think that is probably
That's why I shop at the Nugget, man.
The Nugget is nice. The Nugget. Is the Nugget exist nationally or no? It's just a West Coast thing?
It's locally owned, actually. I think there's 6 or 7 stores still locally, independently owned.
Yeah, it's like it's like Whole Foods before Whole Foods became Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's nice.
Yep, never have to wait because they'll open up another check line for you. They greet you with a smile.
Oh yeah, you could spend a whole day there. You could have
I'm
a
more than happy to pay a little bit more money.
You could have a
for that
sandwich, a beer, do some wine tasting, get some desserts. It's nice. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's all I got for today. I mean, I got one more thing for you. We should talk about tariffs. We really should talk a little bit. We have to talk about tariffs. People love talking about tariffs. It's exhausting.
Yes.
So before we get into tariffs, I'm going to do one stat. 20 years ago, the average import passenger light truck tire, car tire, light truck tire for all intensive purposes, came into the United States at $33. Today, this year, 2025, it is $113. But we all sell a truck tire still for $200, $300.
Yeah.
Why?
We feel we have to, because we don't have a value proposition to demand more money.
So, okay, I agree with that. It hasn't necessarily improved for the fleets. But have car tires improved that much?
No, I think, in a lot of ways, on car tires, you're looking at, the average person goes in with their Subaru and buys a set of tires. Michelins are going to cost them $1,700, $1,800. Michelin, Bridgestones. the average person can't go in and afford to buy a new set of tires, every few years at that kind of money. And then what they're finding, I believe what they're finding is when they go to that tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 product, and there's some bad tier 4 products, don't get me wrong, but there's some products in that tier 3 range that are pretty decent, and people are going, hey, I'm paying. I mean, sometimes on the consumer side of it, it's a third of the price.
Yeah.
And they're putting these tires on and they're going, hey, wait a second. I feel like I replaced my Michelins in the same timeline as these. They're probably off a little bit, but in their mind, they're going, hey, this is an every 3-4 year expense. If I reduce it by 6 months and I'm paying a third, I'm winning all day long. Do they really notice the biggest difference, which is probably going to be wet weather traction? Do they really notice that? I don't think the average person could tell you one bit if a Michelin's handling better than a GT is.
Well, and how long are they keeping their cars?
I mean, how long are they keeping them?
When I think about it, I think, okay, well, cars have gotten bigger, right? They've gotten more powerful. There's more torque there on the ground. People are keeping them less.
Status. I need a new car.
Yep. And so why put a fancy set on if I'm only going to keep it X amount of times? Yeah. A lot of different reasons for that price point change and buying patterns. Yeah. Okay. Tariffs. I think the biggest one for this episode, November, changes every 2 weeks. So by the time this is out, it'll be different.
We'll have a different
but at
story.
this point in time, medium truck tires are now included in the bare minimum 25%.
Yes.
From all countries. So it didn't matter where it was negotiated. If it was 10% out of Vietnam, okay, now it goes up to 25%. That's probably the biggest drama. I don't think it changes anything.
No. I mean, it levels the playing field in a lot of cases, but I don't think it changes anything.
No.
I still think it's going to be interesting to see where we land in like India, for example.
Right.
India is a big wild card. I mean, what do they do if they can't get something negotiated?
Rumors right now are that's going to come in at 16 points.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the current administration wants almost the average to be, is between 16 and 18 points.
Yeah.
With China being at 50 plus. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there's a bigger play there. But even then, they're still going to manipulate currency. They're going to absorb it, move factories for all intensive purposes for every consumer fleet in the United States. It's your pricing is going to go up. Our pricing is going to go up. But not much is going to change.
You think GT and Hankook finally making that final, hey, we're coming to the U.S. had anything to do with tariffs long term?
Their decision to come?
Yeah.
I think GT just couldn't get it done in a timely fashion, but I think they were the ones hurt most by the first round of tariffs in early 2011.
And that's when they first announced, I believe.
And they first announced it.
They wanted to come to the U.S., and then they backed off as the tariffs backed off.
Yeah. So I think they just didn't want to navigate the volatility, which I could understand that from a business standpoint. And Hankook probably the same thing, right? Mitigate their risks, put some investment in, and they'll likely recoup the margin.
Do we see a ag manufacturer plant open up in the U.S. from maybe BKT or MRL or one of the other guys?
There's already too much production in the United States.
Yeah.
Trailerboard closed their factory in Spartanburg. Yep. You have Metis, you have Firestone, you have Titan, and nobody's running at max capacity right now. Yeah. So even there's enough, more than enough production to cover United States.
Why do you think that is?
Why is there so much production?
Yeah, why are they not at capacity? I mean, ag is such a big part of what we do in the U.S. Why do you think, I mean, is it the imports are so much better and the price point's so much better in a lot of cases that they just stole the market share?
There's a lot to unpack there. Ag tires are running longer.
Yeah.
So you have higher horsepower tractors, but they are functionally getting more hours. So that's huge when you look at it on a per unit basis. Imports, India is covering 30 to 40% is the last numbers I saw from agricultural imports. The labor over there is $8 a day. It's not a quality concern. It's a cost. They can be much more efficient with it. They can also deal with, because of their land costs, they can deal with the volatility of ag a whole lot better in my mind. Yeah. Ag goes like this. It's arguably my biggest passion, and you can see ag spend triple compared to a previous year and then drop down to 5%. Yeah. I mean, we should have a whole episode on it, really, on the current state of the ag market in the Western United States. Yeah. But those volatilities, that's a lot easier to do when you have a plant in the middle of nowhere and you can send everybody home for the day. Firestone, Titan, they don't have that privilege. This Around the Bead is going to have a great tour of the Titan factory coming out this fall, and how important Des Moines was to the United States infrastructure, the union workers that are there, but they can't just send those guys home if they don't have stuff. So they have those high fixed costs, so it's hard to deal with the volatility and get efficient. But OE drives that success, because that's where they can gain on the supply chain, is if they have a factory down the street from John Deere or Case, boom, we can get you product right away.
All right, here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your worst fear in concerns with tariffs over the next 2 years?
I don't think about tariffs unless people ask me.
You brought it up. I said I didn't want to talk about it. You said, no, we're talking about it, John.
What's my worst fear is that there continues to be volatility with it, right? The ups and downs don't help anybody. They make it really challenging and really frustrating for fleets. For those that are holding inventory, namely dealers and distributors, it is extremely costly and has a ton of long-term penalties. Yeah. And for the manufacturers, it creates shortages. So inevitably, so it's 2025, we can try and predict this, that because you have India tariffs, because you have a lot of uncertainty, there is little to no factory production for agricultural tires and a lot of tires as of today. Yeah. So the inventories are getting lower and lower. Theoretically, by spring 2026, you will start to see cracks in the supply chain. This isn't available. This isn't available. This isn't available. And so those are the three major categories to me. Is if tariffs create volatility, the more of this up, down, yes, no, maybe 16, maybe 50, maybe 100. Frustrating for consumers, fleets, and users. Massive financial penalties for dealers and distributors. They incur the biggest penalties there. And then manufacturers essentially shut down production, and it creates shortages. So that's my biggest fear.
Yeah. Pretty good fear.
Okay.
Yeah, you drew that out quite a bit. You could have just said volatility.
You said fear. You wanted the drama. You wanted the drama.
I did want the drama. Absolutely. Yeah. You know I love drama.
Okay. All right. Can we leave it at that for today?
We can leave it at that for the day.
It's been fun.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world and connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.